Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of People of Media. And today I get to interview my friend, Jim Breiner, who is a sage, a man of, I think, wisdom and dignity and stature. I think you carry some weight of wisdom and experience with you. And he is a mentor. So that's kind of how he describe his role right now in the work that he does. He's a mentor to independent media, helping them discover and implement viable business models. He's also a volunteer mentor for an organization called score.org, which he's going to talk a little bit about, which is another dimension. And one of his passions is literature, language, words, literature, and literary fiction. So we're going to start with passion, but first I want to welcome you to the show, Jim.
Thanks, Johnny, and thanks for letting me participate in this data revenue group where I've learned a lot, actually. It's been
And you
interesting.
contributed a lot too. So you just have this kind of gentle, like you're, for whatever reason, people are drawn to you, I think, as kind of a sage. I think you have that sage energy.
A sage. Okay, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Okay, you got the gray hair, man. We can call you the sage. So can you tell us a little bit about that passion for languages and words and literature and where that comes from and what it is?
Yeah, well, languages, literature. I mean, I was always interested in words and reading. My mother was a big reader, encouraged us all to go to the library. So reading was a big part of our growing up. I come from a big family, and all my brothers and sisters all got big into reading.
Yeah.
So languages, though I was a an altar boy during the Catholic Church during the time of the Latin Mass. So I had to learn the Latin of the Latin Mass when I was in elementary school, so fourth grade, fifth grade. So there was a kind of a magic to this language. High school studied Latin and French.
Yeah.
Years later, studied Italian. Years later, studied Spanish. And my goal in all of those studies was to get to be able to converse and to be able to read the great literature of those languages and to be able to converse in those languages.
Yeah.
So I got a master's degree in English literature, and that's so it's just been my life.
Wow. Are you conversant then in how many languages?
I'm fluent in Spanish right now. I have full professional fluency in
Yeah.
Spanish. At one time, my Italian was very good. I was able to do interviews and write articles in Italian. French was actually back towards my university days. I mean, but there I was studying French literature, the 17th and 18th century, writing papers for the French classes at the undergraduate level. So language was a big thing. And then I got into journalism kind of by accident. I needed a job after
Yeah.
the master's degree. And I thought, well, but I'd always been interested in newspapers. I delivered newspapers. I was
Yeah.
a big reader of newspapers. So, um, I thought I would be a culture writer. I would write about movies, books, things like that. That didn't actually happen very much, but
Yeah.
I got into journalism through the side door, ended up covering politics and government, and then later business. So what got me to Data Joe was after I'd been the editor of a business newspaper in Columbus, Ohio, I became publisher of the Baltimore Business Journal. And there I had to run the whole business. So
Yeah.
marketing, advertising,
Yeah.
production, distribution. So I had to learn the hard way. I had to learn how to run a media business. And that it turns out was very valuable when I decided to retire at age 55, go to Latin America. By that time, I was fluent in Spanish. So I was training editors and publishers in Latin America about how to use the new digital tools of the web. This was 2006, yeah, 19 years ago.
Yeah.
So newspapers in Latin America were just starting to learn about the new digital tools and I was training them on that. And
Yep.
then what happened was they said, we don't like working for these publishers. They censor us, they pay us badly, they treat us badly. Could you teach us how to run a media business? And that's where I started doing what Data Joe does,
Yep.
which is look at numbers and all that. So I got into all this stuff. I just sort of followed an indirect career path that's just sort of following my nose and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, this is fascinating, man. I'm gonna did you end up learning Latin? Did you
No, after 2 years of Latin in high school, I decided I don't like this. So I took 4 years of French,
yeah.
and that I liked
Yeah.
because it was very contemporary. And my dream was to go live in Paris, like the expatriate
Yeah.
guys like Hemingway, Fitzgerald, uh, Ezra Pound, T.S. Eliot, all
Oh
those
yeah.
guys. Yeah. Well, those people were my literary heroes. So,
Really?
yeah.
You love the modernists then?
And, because if you study uh, the older stuff, I mean, at my undergraduate level, I was studying 17th, 18th, 19th century
Yep.
literature, English and French. But, that really opens the door to the modern.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. So that and you said a word magic. You said when you're an altar boy and you're hearing the words in this other language, you're hearing Latin, and there's a feeling of magic and awe that comes
well,
up in you.
yeah, that's part of the idea of knowing a language. It's like a secret code. It's a secret power. It's a power. So
Yes.
that learning how to speak another language, wow, isn't that powerful? Because suddenly you have a knowledge that other people don't, and
Yeah.
you have access to information that other people don't. And that
Yes.
to me was always very powerful. And I liked it. I mean, I was pretty good at it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you do, right? You
Yeah.
you go do what you're good at, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm teaching that all the time. I'm
Yeah.
teaching that to myself all the time because there's a reason those things, you know, carry that feeling of magic for us,
Yeah.
right? If you're being called into something. At least that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And people kept, letting me know, saying, you're pretty good at this and you're pretty good at that. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Actually, when I was in high school, I was in a lot of theater. Or actually tied college, high school and college. I was in a lot of theater. So
Yeah.
the spoken word was big.
Yeah.
And that helped me actually later in my career when I was editor and publisher of business papers. I ended up going on TV a lot
Yeah.
um, to promote, to market and brand those newspapers. Uh,
Yeah.
and that was, having that comfort with public speaking
Yep.
uh, was good.
Yeah. Well, and this all feeds in because there's this idea you reference, which is kind of knowing the secret, right? So like learning a
Yeah,
language is like being initiated into the secret, and
yeah,
all of a sudden there's a power that comes with that because now you know something. Um,
and it opens up your world. I mean,
yes.
it just really opens up your world.
Yep. Yeah. And so when I hear you talk, and even as I've watched you, participate over, many meetings, you've been really faithfully attending the Media Data Collaborative, and that's a monthly meeting. Um, there is this kind of when I said sage energy, I'm not just flattering you. There's a teacher. I think you're a teacher. You're like almost a professor, right? You're comfortable in front of crowds. You can articulate ideas. Um, and then you seem to
Yeah,
have this interest in developing people and giving them tools to make them successful. So tell us about that part.
yeah. When I was with American City Business Journals, which is now called bizjournals.com,
Yep.
group of 45 newspapers, they were big at working with the Gallup organization on developing, using questionnaires and interviews to identify people's talents. And, they would look at a profile, say 15 talents that a publisher might have, or 15 talents that a editor might have. that might make them good. And then they would, and our training was focus on your top three. And my top three were were developer, um, well, relationships, and ethics, basically. Um,
Wow.
so so I really worked at. I started working with a coach when I was
Yeah.
in Baltimore to help
Yeah.
me coach my people. And I really learned a lot about there about uh, if you build your enterprise by developing your people. I
Yes.
focused probably, I don't know, three-fourths of my attention on how am I developing my people this week so that um, when I go away, they're in charge. They know what to do.
Yeah.
They can handle things. And if I go away during the year, and I used to have 5 weeks vacation. I took it. None of this. No, I took my 5 weeks and
Yeah.
I would coach my people. I said, okay, I'm going away. I'm going to take in 2 weeks. We take my kids to Europe. And I don't want to hear from you while I'm gone. I
Yeah.
mean, unless there's something really, really a big, big crisis or something like that. And I want you to make decisions. Don't delay making decisions. Make decisions while I'm gone. My
Yep.
commitment to you is when I come back, I'm not going to criticize your decisions.
Right.
We may talk about them. I may ask you if you think you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was never, but our coaching sessions, I did an hour a week with each of my five department heads. Other publishers told me that was crazy. 5 hours a week. Are you kidding me? How can you find the time for 5 hours a week? Well, just spend 5 hours a week. You avoid 20 hours a week of putting out fires. That's the
Yeah.
way I looked at it. So
Yeah.
anyway, so yes,
Yeah. Well,
teacher, teacher, trainer, coach.
yeah. That's a very strong nugget too. Like that's just as far as like we've just stumbled upon, I think, a very important principle. Um, it's funny, this is coming up a lot in conversations that I have with people, and there's a barrier, there's a hurdle that some people never get over, which is that hurdle of empowering other people, right? Like empowering other people because our tendency is to stay embedded in things that we're good at or that we've learned to be good at. So, for example, for my company, this happened probably 3 years ago. My team actually had to kick me out of operations because I had built myself. I'm a very creative person. I'm not the person you want, um, doing repetitive tasks because I'll become a bottleneck. You don't want me there. But I'm very creative. And so there were problems that needed to be solved in the organization. And I created these ways to solve them. I created kind of over complex systems, which is what I do. I created over complex systems, but that got the job done. But then I made myself essential to operations because they were too complex to pass on to other people. And so my team actually had to have an intervention on me. And because I have a good team, I've an amazing team. I think you've met Caleb. And so it took it took probably a year for them to kick me out completely of operations. But it was one of the best things we could have done for our organization. And I probably never would have jumped that hurdle myself if I didn't have my team on the other end of it, empowered to kind of take out of me what they needed to make themselves competent and then rebuild my messed up systems. um, but it's hard. It's extremely hard.
It's very hard, uh, especially, if you think you're the smartest person,
Yeah.
you know, and I tend to be thinking I'm the smartest
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
It's, one of the problems I have is that it's
Yeah.
that arrogance,
Yeah.
and which means that I don't listen enough.
Yeah.
I really had to train myself and still do
Yeah.
listen to other people and don't say, yeah, we already tried that, or yeah, I already know about that. No,
Yeah.
say, tell me more about the issue you're talking. Tell me more
Yeah.
about that.
Oh man. I mean, like, and that to me, that's greatness. Like I think that willingness to be humble and humility, a sign of humility is a willingness to listen, like to actually listen, right? And to say, maybe I don't know, um, is that's the sign of humility, and that's what invites greatness out of other people. Otherwise, you're just constantly planting your own greatness everywhere. Like, right, like I have all the answers,
Yeah,
and
and you tell them a solution, you should do this. They can't do it
yeah,
because it's not in their wheelhouse.
right,
So you have to help them figure out how they can solve these problems, help them figure out how they can use their talents to
yep,
solve the problem that they
right,
have.
yep, it's empowerment. So you know who's really good at this is Tim. I don't know if you saw the interview I did with Tim Hulskamp, who's the co-founder of the 1440 daily newsletter. Like, I think they're up to 4.5 million
Yes, I
subscribers.
did see that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I did a second one with him that was just about because he sees his job at this point as developing, investing in people and delighting his people. That's how he sees his job. So he's really not, as far as I can tell, involved in operations or anything like that. And I'm involved in some vision strategy, but I think he sees the most of his job is keeping his team ridiculously happy, um, and drawing them out into their greatness. And that's how he talks. And I've met hardly anybody who talks about it with as much fervor and intentionality as he talked. I'll share that interview with you because I don't know that you got that one. It was the second one I did just recently with him.
Okay.
But I think you would resonate because I think that's what you've learned is the people are the developer, relationships, and ethics. You said were your top three. Um,
Yeah.
and then you've
Truth,
lived consistently with that since then.
trust, all based on trust. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is good stuff. So you're helping now. Now you were going to tell us a little bit about SCORE. So I get this right. You're a mentor, and I've and you're looking to mentor hungry people that love news and love media and have the passion to create a viable business model.
That's what I am doing in with Sembra Media
Yep.
and other stuff. With SCORE,
Yeah.
SCORE is affiliated with the Small Business Administration, and that's a U.S. volunteer organization, and that I'm doing here in Cleveland, Ohio, which
Okay.
is my hometown. The other
Yep.
stuff is more global.
Yeah.
Um, I work with news media people all over the world. But with SCORE, um, basically we offer our free services, free volunteer services, and tons of free materials to startups and also established businesses, small businesses that are looking for help. So one of my first clients was a guy who uh, he services big manufacturers, and
Hmm.
he had lost his contacts with um, he had been going on word of mouth,
Hmm.
getting business by word of mouth for years. And all of a sudden, the people he had been connected with were moving away, retiring, or whatever. So now he had to develop new contacts. That's what I worked with him on. How can you uh, reestablish relationships with previous clients, and how can you get some new clients in a very challenging environment?
Yeah.
So we have regular meetings. I now have about 40 clients, of whom probably 10 or 12 I'm still actively involved with coaching, mostly on SCORE lists me as a digital marketing expert. I present
Okay.
myself as a digital marketing person. And frankly, that's a really, really difficult uh, moment right now. Right now, I mean,
Yeah.
6 months ago, I was telling people one thing, and now I'm telling them something different. I mean,
Yeah.
AI has changed that so much. So
Yeah. Yeah.
what I'm telling people now is uh, you can't scale relationships. Your businesses are based on relationships. You can't scale that. You have to build those one at a time through events, through maybe email marketing, through, I mean, you've got to be trying to reach them through many, many different channels. It used to be you put something on uh, Facebook or you uh, do search engine optimization. That stuff doesn't work anymore. For a lot of
Yeah.
businesses, it's just
Yeah.
not working.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to evolve. You can't scale relationships. I love that. I love that. Yeah, because that's again, that's going back to a strength for you, which is relationships. You know how to build relationships. You know how to manage relationships. You know how to create trust within relationships, and you're trying to bequeath that over to these small businesses. How to do that? Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
that's accurate.
So now tell me the connection. So again, you've got media clients over here where you're a mentor. You've got small businesses over here where you're a marketing mentor. You're kind of a business mentor over here. How do those connect, or how do those inform each other, or how does each keep the other sharp? I guess is maybe the question.
Well, they both have, the same problem, which is um, define your market. I mean, the media businesses that I have worked with in various countries, but mainly Latin America and Spain over the past 15 years, um, they generally have a problem of they know how to do journalism, but they don't know how to do business.
Yep.
So I'm coaching them on that, and that gets to the heart of, are you publishing stuff that, what's your target market? Who are your target customers?
Yep.
And what do they want? And also, do you know what they want? And are you producing it? Basically, that's it. Look at the numbers, learn how to analyze the numbers. I mean, a lot of the media that fail because they're publishing stuff that the editor and the publisher want to publish
What?
and are interested in, but maybe
Yep.
nobody else cares. But
Yep.
but a lot of them could have maybe succeeded if they'd
Yep.
worked harder at identifying
Yep.
the needs and the wants of a particular target market.
Yep. And that works on both sides of the equation, right? Like a lot of small businesses fail for the same reason. They don't
Right.
take the time to understand what their audience needs.
Exactly. Right. They produced what they want to produce the way they want to produce it. And maybe someone will come to them and say, well, couldn't you do this a little bit differently? I would like to do this by your product. Um, like, let's say it's a food product and, you like, let's say you have a restaurant and, you like to produce food a particular way, but nobody wants it.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to have to offer some dishes that are a little, in your opinion, down market,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. No, that's right. Right on. Are you familiar with the story brand framework?
No.
Okay, you might enjoy that. So, man, it's his last name's Miller, the person that wrote it. His first name starts with a D, but it's called Story Brand, all one word, Story Brand. And one of the big lessons, like they use the hero's journey framework, like the hero's journey and kind of the mythological framework and they bring it into marketing. And they say most of us market as if we were the hero, right? And what he's saying is no, your client, your customer is the hero. You're the sage, right? In the archetype. So you're Yoda, not Luke, right? Is basically and it teaches you to then begin to communicate to the market as if they were the hero instead of communicating to the market as if you're the hero, which kind of falls on deaf ears because people are driven by their own needs, wants, and desires, right? They're not driven by your hubris and pride.
This is this was the big theme. What you're talking about is trying to figure out um, ways to get feedback
Yep.
from the audience and target market to help develop the news agenda. I mean, these were journalist conventions in Austin, Texas, and Perugia, Italy, that had all kinds of panel discussions about this sort of stuff. And one of the things that came through over and over again is, how come these YouTubers are doing so well and,
Yep.
growing virally and all that? It's because they're engaged with their audiences. They've figured out the kinds of things that their audiences are interested in. And you don't have to, resort to sensationalism and so forth,
Right.
but you can replicate some of the things that they do
For
to
sure.
make your own media organization more successful. And you can carry that over into the small business world as well.
Yeah, I think so. So I'll just throw How to Build a Story Brand, that book. I think it would give you some more language to say exactly what you're already saying. It's a very good book. Um, and then I was going to ask you about so speaking of business models, right? Like business models at work. I've been pretty fascinated by the movement that's happening in the newsletter side of things, where you have smaller, and even just sole proprietors creating business models that support them through just the digital, just the newsletter, and then multiple monetize. Uh, so are you familiar with like Substack and even the like the
Yes. Yes,
well, you're on Substack, so yeah, so
yes.
you're familiar. What do you think about what they're trying to do over there?
I think it's good. I think it's really good. I think it's opened up the door, as you say, for lots of creative folks who otherwise may not have had a chance to create a business
Hmm.
out of their creative content. It's getting crowded, and there are people who you read a lot now about subscription fatigue.
Yep.
That people are worried about. How much am I spending for all these subscriptions? For me personally, what I like about it is I get Substacks from other creators, so that's constantly feeding
Hmm.
uh, an appetite for information about well, on languages, um, science,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
history, things like
Yep.
that.
Um, so it would be yeah, I'm interested. So I'm interested in the newsletter movement for two reasons. One reason is sometimes you have um, career journalists who've had a hard time figuring that, they just aren't built to know the business side. Uh, and they feel trapped in organizations that are treating them poorly. And one of their exit strategies is to use their own name and their own reputability within the market to go and start their own thing, right? And then monetize their own thing. So I like that as an alternative to staying in a place that's not treating you well. Um, I don't know
One
what's,
other thing,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think um, they'd probably be better off. I mean, uh, if they could get 5 or 6 or 7 folks together
Yes.
on a Substack, so that A, they could be publishing every day,
Yeah.
and B, they'd have more of they'd be offering what made newspapers successful 50 years ago was kind of like a big department store of news. So you
Yeah.
could get people,
Yep.
culture,
Yep.
politics, humor, whatever.
Yeah.
And I need to get a partner.
Yeah. 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 That's good because it does create this opportunity for collaboration for sure. Like I love that. Um, so let me ask you this. So if there are people that are watching this or listening to this that are kind of thinking about making the leap, right? Thinking, okay, I'm really good at finding stories. I already have an audience that really knows me. And I'm kind of thinking about striking out on my own. Are you the person? Are you a person for them to?
I don't know. I would tell them, I would just tell them how to get started, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to have email addresses
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
if you're going to be effective as a Substack person, you need some email addresses. So I
Yeah.
started with about 400
Yeah.
email addresses. Now I have, and that's um, 2 years ago. And
Yeah.
now I have 1,500,
Yeah.
and it's just grown
Amazing.
sort of slowly and
Yep.
incrementally. And to be honest, I think some of those people came in through the algorithm of Substack and are
Yep.
not that really, they're really not engaged with my stuff. I
Yep.
think I think people should expect that if they do something like this, maybe 10% of their audience is going to be really engaged, and
Sure.
other 90%, 80% are going to be just sort of, look, what's he written this week? Okay, move on.
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. All right. So then the person that should come to you, describe to me, right? So let's pretend we're even doing the story brand, right? You're the wise sage, you're Yoda. What does your Luke look like?
Anybody I think who has a lot of questions about how marketing works. And I'll take them down to the basics. I'm not going to give them a big textbook. I'm not a big believer in, having people get an MBA or a degree in marketing necessarily. Um, Although it's great if you got it,
Yeah.
but I would take them down to the basics of the business model canvas. There's 9 segments of activity basically in
Yep.
any business. And what are the questions you have to answer to make your business more viable by looking at who's your target client? Um, how are you going to generate revenue?
Yeah.
How are you going to control costs? I mean,
Yep.
I would anybody who's really
Yep.
just trying to start out. So to answer your question, it would be that person, the person who
Yep.
has an idea and they're going along and maybe they're 2 years into something, or maybe
Yeah.
they're just starting. That's what, and I've been giving away this advice.
Yeah. Right. Because it brings you joy, because it's who you are. You're a mentor, you're a teacher. You're
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So I'm hearing that it's then, you know, early. I'm early in the process and I don't know what I don't know. Um, I've got a passion. I've got a certain niche that I want to serve with content. And I need, I need somebody who's 10 years, 20 years ahead of me to tell me what I don't know, because you've done it all, right? Like you've had to oversee the entire publishing organism. So you have knowledge of how every silo within an organization works.
Yeah.
Um,
And and getting back to Substack and newsletters, what I really like about them is that they're personal. An email newsletter is personal, goes right to someone's mailbox. It's got my name on it or whoever the publisher is on it, and it avoids the intermediaries of artificial intelligence, social networks,
yeah,
Google search. You're going directly to the person.
yeah.
That's what I like about it.
Okay, so then how much should publishers in general, we're talking about local niche publishers. We're generally talking about small to mid-sized local and niche publishers. How much should they be paying attention to and investing in the newsletter um, component of their business?
I think it would be, it depends on what kind of business they have, but I think it should be an important part. And then they need to be looking at also at, do they have anything they can put onto YouTube or
Mm.
TikTok? Or do they have any any way they can use the relationships they have to create events? Or can they use any of the relationships they have to help sell books or something else, or just retail in general? I mean, that's what I'm seeing is, multiple revenue sources, but all those multiple revenue sources built off of relationships in the digital world and in the real world where they have a direct control,
Yeah,
where they're not being uh, disintermediated, meaning
yeah,
somebody's getting in between them and their target market.
yeah. Right. You got to own your audience,
Right.
own the relationship with your audience in a way that can't be taken away from you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. And you mentioned video, so you put video up.
Yeah, but it's hard to do and it's costly and I'm not sure it's right for everybody.
Yeah,
But if you can do it and if you have a way to make it work, YouTube, it's killing the world. I mean, it's a very useful tool for news
yeah,
distribution, I think.
yeah, yeah. And then you're saying events, if you can, in general, right? Events like
Face
getting your
to
niche community
face,
together in person or digitally, right? I'm assuming you mean both types of events.
both, yeah, but definitely face to face is the
Yeah,
best because there you build trust.
Yep.
Everything comes from trust.
Everything comes from trust. That's the quotable. That's the quote to take away from this. You're saying newsletter. You're saying yes, newsletter,
Yes.
owned audience.
No,
Uh,
maybe TikTok, because
yep.
you can get away with things like 20 seconds, produce something 20 seconds that maybe
Yep.
promotes the newsletter, that maybe promotes a website, that maybe promotes an event, that maybe promotes other things you're doing.
Yep. Yep. And then you're saying retail. So it's good to have a retail product and probably like a book, something like that, that then all of your channels can be funneling people into an actual
Right.
sale, not and different than the normal products that publishers
Yes.
produce. Yeah. Man, we could probably have a whole session just about that. Uh, so that's good because what I was going to ask you, and you kind of got into it naturally, is just what's the advice? Where should uh, local and niche media be firing their cannons, so to speak, right, in terms of creating a viable business model for the future. Uh, and as we close, we're about out of time. I would love any last advice in terms of what you're seeing. Like, the person that's watching this is generally, a publishing leader, somebody who's facing the challenges of transformation. Any encouragement or advice that you would give from your many years of experience as the wise sage that you are, to help them navigate?
Building trust in your brand through all kinds of transparency. I mean, I just said there's trust. Well, how do you build trust? You build trust, among other things, by being transparent about the mistakes you've made, the things you're doing, how you're being financed, who your people are,
Yeah,
what's the reputation of, what's the um, uh, uh, social capital
yeah,
of your organization.
yeah,
That's your number one asset.
yeah. I love it. I love it. And I hear listen to your audience. So everybody, this is Jim Breiner, the sage. He's a developer, right? You're a builder. You're relationship person. That you've got a relationship genius, and then integrity, right? Which is what we ended with, the idea that integrity is what builds trust, transparency builds trust.
Right.
Thanks a lot for joining us today, and everybody who was able to be here. Thank you for listening in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Johnny.
Take care.